I was told not to leave that room. But of course, I didn't listen. It was a huge room, decorated to perfection, but I felt suffocated. The white walls made me feel trapped, and the feeling of being trapped in another place again made me sick to my stomach. Chapter 16, Romantic After Fun. 𝐿𝐤𝐬 took me to a room and specifically told me not to leave it. I, of course, didn't listen. The room was huge and decorated to perfection. It was a beautiful room to have, but I couldn't stand it. The white walls made me feel trapped, and the feeling of being trapped in another place again made a sick feeling settle in my stomach. After trying to sleep in there for about an hour, I just couldn't handle any more of the constant tossing and turning I had been doing. Every part of me wanted to see Kieran, and not being able to was driving me insane. My hands were shaky and I honestly felt lost, deciding that I didn't care whether or not 𝐿𝐤𝐬 found me in the room. I walked out and headed toward the only other room I felt somewhat comfortable in. The halls were quiet, but considering it was probably about 8 in the evening, I knew there were still a large amount of people still awake. I crept down the hall fairly quickly, but I was also trying to stay aware of everything around me. I had no clue where I even was in this huge house, so I naturally had no clue where my old room was. I tried to sneakily walk around the house. I kept my head down and speed walked past random pack members who gave me weird glances. This house was huge, and I knew I'd be lucky if I were even in the same relative area as my childhood room. I rounded corner after corner until I found a hallway that I was familiar with. A smile crept its way to my face as I ran to the room that's mine. I looked around before slowly twisting the doorknob and entering the room. I was greeted by the same scent and scene that I had left it with. There were a few random tapes on the floor from the home movies that I was watching before. I shut the door behind me before walking over to the television. I opened the cupboard that the TV was placed on, searched through the tapes. I picked up one that had the date 2018 written on it in blue marker, which I assumed was permanent. I placed the movie into the TV and waited for it to play after turning it on. The screen turned a blue color while the television made a few noises. Then, the video started playing, and a small child was the first I saw. "I don't want to go to school today," the boy mumbled as he belly flopped onto the couch. The person behind the camera chuckled, and you could tell by the feminine giggle that it was a girl. "Riley, you have to go," the woman said. Hearing Riley's name made me sit up a little straighter. Riley huffed and let out a loud groan, making me chuckle. Strangely enough, Riley reminded me of Bolton. A sudden pang of sadness hit me when I thought about Bolton. My heart hurt because the thought of Kieran also came with the thought of Bolton. I just wanted Kieran to hold me or scold me again or something. Anything but be away from him. I sighed and leaned forward. I pressed about on the TV, making the video jump forward. A younger Grayson appeared on the screen. He was sitting at a desk reading something. It wasn't a book. I assume it was a letter. "Hey there, sexy," the same woman's voice said from the last video. I could easily say that the woman behind the camera was Alex, my mother. Grayson looked up from the paper and threw, I assume, as Alex a bright smile. "Hey there, beautiful," he said, making Alex cough. "Wow, you ruined it. I was trying to make a sex tape. And you ruined it," Alex said, and I could just hear the sarcasm dripping from her voice. Grayson's eyes lit up, and a smirk graced his young, masculine face. Grayson looked like he couldn't be any older than 22. 23 or 4 was pushing it. "Let's just not record it then," he said, 𝐾𝐞𝐬. He stood up and grabbed the camera from Alex before the screen went blank. In the black screen, I saw the horrified grimace on my face. I looked away from the TV, thinking of just how close I was to accidentally seeing a sex tape of my parent. I hurriedly grabbed another movie from the cupboard, not caring what it was. I was just hoping Alex and Grayson weren't being horny teenagers in it. I took out the video that could have been classified as porn and inserted the new one. The video began playing, and a woman's face that I recognized as Vivian from the videos I had watched previously appeared. "Alex and Grayson have been in bed all day, and it's literally..." She looked down to check her phone and then hold it up, showing the lock screen. 2:07 p.m. "Time to wake up," she whispered heavily. The camera turned around to show a door. Vivian quietly opened the door and walked in. Laying in bed were Alex and Grayson. You would expect them to sleep together so beautifully considering how in love they were. But honestly, it was a pretty weird sight. Alex had one leg under the covers and one while head was laying on Grayson's chest. Her arm was laid across Grayson's chest as well, while the other arm was laying on the pillow. Alex took up most of the bed while Grayson just stayed on his small portion of what he had. Romantic AF. Vivian mumbled to herself while the camera zoomed in on Alex's sleeping face. What the heck is AF? I muttered to myself, thinking of how stupid the term sounded. And fun. And flexible. Always fun. I mumbled as I scratched my head. After fun. Alex opened her eyes slowly and narrowed them on the camera. Or I guess Vivian. What the hell are you doing? Alex said in a very deep, groggy voice. Her words woke up Grayson, who didn't say anything, rather just let out a groan. Wake up. It's 2 in the afternoon. Vivian replied, making Alex groan a lot like Grayson. Well, you wouldn't want to wake up if you were up till 4 in the morning either. Alex mumbled, turned to Grayson and snuggling her face in the crook of his neck. Doing what? Vivian questioned. Alex sharply turned her face to Vivian with a smirk. You know what? She said before turning back to Grayson. I didn't want to witness any more of what my parents were like when they were younger at that moment. I leaned forward and just flat out shut the TV off, hoping to clear my mind of everything I had just watched. I rubbed my eyes, feeling more tired than I had been earlier. I leaned back and laid on the floor, staring at the ceiling. It was white with some random pattern painted into it. I started dozing off as I stared at the ceiling until I hear something. Or, should I say, someone. I have to go. Let me go. I sat up and could hear my hearing go from 0 to 100 real fast. That voice sounded exactly like Marilyn. I stood up and walked carefully out of the room, making sure to shut the door. I followed Marilyn's voice that I only heard to other times when she said stop it, and I know. I walked down a set of stairs and came to a hallway that split off at the end, allowing you to make a left or a right. Marilyn, I whisper-shouted, knowing that her voice was coming from this floor. Marilyn. I continued saying her name as I got to the end of the hallway. I looked left and said her name again before turning right. As soon as I did that, I collided with something. Well, someone. I stumbled backward as my heartbeat raced. I looked up, seeing a tall, built, blonde-haired man staring down at me. His arms were crossed and he didn't look happy in the slightest. But, my wolf said, assuring me of something I was hoping wouldn't happen. I remembered from what Kieran had told me that the beta was basically just a second alpha, only he couldn't dominate the alpha himself. What are you doing out here? He questioned with stoic features much like Kieran's and what I could remember of yours from our brief encounter. I, just was, don't know. I stuttered out, not sure of what to say. How was I supposed to say, oh yeah, thought I heard my friend talking who is supposed to be locked in a cellar right now. Obviously. Because it sounds like you think your sick friend is going to be out here roaming the halls, he said, staring down at me with pity. I felt anger bubble inside of me the way he called her sick. She's not sick. Trust me. I know sick. Get back to your room. I have orders from your brother to make sure you stay there. Which one? I questioned, feeling my anger come off in waves. He obviously didn't like how I was standing up to him. His eyes flashed to a much darker shade of green than they originally were, making me shrink back into my small little self. Both of them. He growled out, giving me a shove, intending me to start walking back to my room. Joke's on you, buddy. I don't know where my room is. Goddamn psycho. I heard him mutter, making anger resurface. Usually a comment like that wouldn't affect me. I've dealt with it for years. But I could have swore I heard her. I was not crazy. A low growl erupted from my lips as I could feel my wolf overpower my human side. I didn't even fight it. I let her do it. I turned to him with a clenched jaws, my canines extended. My vision narrowed in on him. My wolf chuckled darkly as we watched the beta's face go from stoic to fearful in seconds. I'll show you, psycho, my wolf said with a smile. We took a step forward towards him. But before we could reach him, a loud crack signaled throughout the hall as my head snapped to the side. I didn't have any time to react before it was lights out for me. Chapter 17, Best Mom Ever. I woke up with the worst pain in my neck. I slowly opened my eyes expecting to see daylight, but instead it was actually pretty dark. Sleep well. A feminine voice spoke up, making me jump. I quickly turned my head to the left of me where the voice came from, which I instantly regretted. My neck tensed up, making pain surge through my body. Oh my God. I didn't mean to scare you, she said, jumping up and coming close to my side to make sure I was okay. Her worried face was framed by long, dark brown hair that looked basically black. She had dark, chocolate brown eyes to match. Her brows were furrowed together as she asked me questions that I wasn't really bothering to listen to. I was just focused on her face and my neck pain. I'm okay, I said as she helped me sit up. I wasn't really okay. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐬. It felt like someone just broke my neck. Oh, thank God. She sighed and then flashed me a gorgeous smile. I'm Reagan, the 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐻's mate. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐬 sent me up here to make sure you didn't wake up alone. She rambled quickly, leading me to believe she was either nervous or excited. Maybe even both. I already know who you are. Well, everyone in the pack knows who you are. Wait, that sounds weird. She said, starting to get even more nervous. Hey, calm down. Breathe a little. I interrupted her. I placed a hand on her shoulder and squeezed, which I'm surprised actually did cool her down. Her brown eyes connected with my grey ones. Deep breath, I encouraged. She nodded and sucked in a deep breath. Reagan continued taking deep breaths until she seemed to actually calm down. Then, she shot me a shy smile. Sorry, I'm new to this pack. I haven't made many new friends since Maverick doesn't really let me leave his side. She chuckled nervously. I could only assume Maverick was her mate. It's better than not being able to see him at all. I mumbled to myself, but she ended up hearing me. Yeah, that would suck. I don't know what I'd do if I couldn't see him, she said with a light giggle. My heart ached at her oblivious comment. She obviously had no clue that I was in that very position as we speak. I frowned and looked down at my hands in my lap. Everything okay? I looked up at her as she looked at me with worried eyes once again. I nodded, but everything inside of me wanted to scream that I wasn't, and the love of my life was being abused by my own family. And my only friends are locked in cellars. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐬. Good. I was worried that I could tell Reagan was about to babble again, so I was thankful when the door opened. We both turned to look and see my brother walk in. Eli's eyes stopped on me with an expressionless look. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐬. Maverick is looking for you, he said as he continued looking at me. With an okay, Reagan ran out of the room and slammed the door behind her. She's interesting, I said with a sigh and a small smile. Ella ran a hand through his brown hair and walked over to me as I sat in the bed. Trust me, when I found out she was Maverick's mate, I could barely believe it. Someone like her helping to keep this pack in order, he said with a small chuckle. He shook his head as he did so. She has anxiety, so she gets really nervous talking to new people. Oh, it made sense. I mean, I'd never really been around anyone with anxiety, but her constant anxiousness, whether or not I was upset with her, was what I believed someone with anxiety would act like. I took a seat in a chair on the far corner of my room. I watched him as I waited for him to say something until it hit me that I did not make it to my room last night. How'd I get in here? I questioned Eli as I stared directly into his icy blue eyes. Trevor brought you up here, said you turned around to look at him, but you tripped and ended up twisting your neck as you went down. Eli explained. He shook his head and scratched his chin, looking away from me. I'm not sure how much of that I believe. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐻. He muttered. I scrunched my brows together, recalling what I could remember from last night. Wait, I didn't fall. Someone knocked me out. I defended as I pointed to myself. I might have been a bit clumsy growing up, but I can assure you I was the least bit clumsy now. I was probably more agile than most people. So you're telling me that Trevor snapped your neck for no reason? Well, I wouldn't say no reason. I did recall my wolf feeling the urge to tear the beta apart limb from limb. I raised my hand slowly to my neck and rubbed it. I now noticed just hot stuff it was. Sure. But I hadn't realized how stiff and hard to move it was. No. He was in front of me the whole time. I mumbled mainly to myself. I took in a sharp breath before reality hit me and I realized what had actually happened. How am I still alive if someone snapped my neck? I practically shouted at Eli. He didn't even bat an eye at my panic, but just leaned a bit farther back into his chair and sighed. "Gray," he said, using the name they gave me parents. "You're a werewolf. Our bodies heal the most unimaginable injuries at record time." I nodded as if telling him I understood, but in my mind all I could think of was, what the hell is wrong with these crazy wolf people? We both sat in silence for about a minute, I fidgeting with my hands while Elijah watched me closely. It wasn't like he was watching me because he didn't trust me. It was more of checking to make sure I was okay. Or at least that's what I thought he meant by it. "Well, if you're up for it. Mom is impatiently waiting with our Uncle Andrew in her room," Eli offered. "She wants to see you, but was worried you didn't want to see her first thing when you woke up. I've never seen her so self-conscious," he explained, chuckling lightly. I froze thinking of her. My mom, as in Alex. Honestly, I wasn't fond of her at the moment. I wanted to love her, and under different circumstances I probably would have been overjoyed to have met her. But not now. Not when she has my mate and only 2 friends locked in cellars. I didn't know how to reply to Eli. Say yes and try to have a civilized conversation with the woman who I had been dreaming of meeting since I was a child, or stay in my room with a sore neck thinking of what life would be like if my parents' pack had never found us. Would Kieran and I be training right now? Would Meryl be painting her nails? Would Bolton be saying something stupid in an attempt to get on Kieran's nerves? A chuckle slipped past my lips as I thought about how Bolton was probably doing that now, even though they're all starving and beaten half to death. I looked up quickly after chuckling to myself to see Eli staring at me with a very confused expression. I mentally cursed myself for making myself seem even more psychotic than he probably thinks I am. I started to say but didn't know how to end it. Did I really want to go and talk to her? Maybe it was best to just stay here with Eli. "Listen, you don't have to. I get it. We are holding you in jaw," Eli said, taking a pause. I could tell he was trying to tiptoe around his words. "Friends hostage. But I will say that she only has good intentions." His words made the voice, my wolf, growl loudly inside my head. Its painful ringing to my ears, which I was sadly used to by now. My wolf didn't agree with Elijah. She didn't think Alex had good intentions. The only thing she knew was that her mate was dying in a cellar and my mother wasn't doing much about it. "I'll go talk to her." I finally agreed. But as soon as the words came out, I wish I had never said them. A smile graced Eli's handsome face. I knew then that there was no way I could take back what I had said. It obviously meant the world and a half to Eli that I was willing to speak with Alex. "Will Grayson be there?" I asked, taking a second pause to recall his name. Eli shook his head. "No," making me feel a lot better. I had nothing against Grayson. My father, besides the fact that he's one of the main contributors to my mate be held in a cell. He just scares me. I always imagine my father being so doddish. Grayson looks more like he should be running a gang or chilling with the mafia. To be short, Grayson did not seem approachable or friendly. Whatsoever. Jail must have spent a lot of time with him growing up like father, like son. Eli helped me out of bed into where Alex was with our uncle. I had never heard of Andrew before. I honestly thought Eli was talking about Riley at first until I remembered that literally no one knows where the mysterious Riley I like to steal my brother's baby for fun, and in revenge or whatever Hayes has gone. Thinking of Riley sent to shiver down my spine, and thinking of his last name gave me another. That was my last name. No, I'm Auden Aldridge, not Gray Hayes. 𝐾𝐜 left 17 years ago. I shook the thoughts away as Eli knocked on a large wooden door. Before he even had time to take his hand away from the door, it flung open to expose Alex and a man behind her who I guessed was Andrew. Andrew had light green eyes and light chestnut brown hair. A pair of glasses sat on his nose which intrigued me. If werewolves see all of these unimaginable things, then why can't it make Andrew see better? My thoughts were cut short when Alex began talking. Thankfully, it was to Eli and not me. I don't think I was mentally prepared to talk to her again just yet. Dad wants you. He and Jill are waiting for you in the office, Alex said seriously, not looking at me once for. Eli questioned. You know, Alex stated, not breaking eye contact. I looked at Eli and watched as his eyes worriedly flickered down to me for a split second before returning to his mother. He nodded and turned around but stopped. He then turned back to me and got close to my ear, whispering to me in extremely hushed tone that Alex would not be able to hear as she walked away from Eli and I over to Andrew. When you decide to leave, go back to your room. Don't look for me. And do not go down to those cellars without me. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I was used to people giving me orders all my life, but something about the way he did it ticked my wolf off. I wasn't sure if it was because she knew as well as I did that they were probably going to go down there just to beat up our mate and friends some more, or just the fact that he told us not to try and see our mate. As my wolf growled viciously in my head, I nodded. I took that as his cue to leave, and I took that as my cue to run away from Alex like a bat elk. Not really. I wanted to, but I actually was scared that she'd end up ripping the hair out of my head when she caught me. I didn't bother thinking about if because I know she would have caught me. I didn't doubt that I got my temper from Alex. I scratched my head thinking about the poor girl from the mall who I practically scalped. I walked into the room where Alex watched me closely and Andrew watched me wide-eyed. They were both sitting on a large bed which I assumed by the overpowering scent of the room was Alex and Grayson's. I stood in front of them not really knowing what to do. Eli said you wanted to talk to me, I said, looking down at the floor. My heart was beating out of my chest and I couldn't figure out so much. I had just spoken to her not long ago. Well, we didn't really talk much, more like argued. I'm gonna go, Andrew said, still staring at me. I didn't have to look at him to know he was. I could feel his heavy stare on me. I raised my head up and watched as he left the room. When I turned back to look at Alex, she was already looking at me. She patted the bed beside her where Andrew had been sitting. I gulped knowing she wanted me to sit there. I slowly made my way over and sat down. I always hoped you would look like me, Alex said as she reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. I didn't flinch. I did the complete opposite. I literally just froze in place as I watched and listened to her. I always hoped you would have my light blue eyes and light brown hair. I can see that didn't happen, she joked with a slight chuckle. I laughed nervously, not knowing what to say to her. Thankfully, she continued talking. I talked to your father about them. I could feel her hatred come off in waves at the way she said them, as if she wanted to call them something else. If it were up to me, I would let you see them one last time. Sadly, that's not the case, she said, making my heart stop. Alex was supposed to help me see them. She made the deal with me saying she would talk Grayson into letting me see them if I made friends. Which I did. I now know Eli and Reagan. I could possibly even include Trevor, but I doubt he likes me enough to even call me an acquaintance. I turned my head away from her, squeezing my eyes shut as I felt my wolf come forward. She wanted control and she wanted to make Alex pay. Kill her. My wolf's words burned into my brain. The words were filled with so much hatred, and I knew that if she had her way, Alex would be dead in seconds. Well, that would be the best case in area. Worst case would be that I was dead in seconds. Either way, someone is dead, so it was best that I just push her back. After a moment of me fighting her for control, I stood up off of the bed and looked at Alex. Why won't you just let me see them? I won't hug him. I won't touch him. I won't even talk to him. He's my mate. I need him. I shouted at her, feeling anger bubble within me. 𝐿𝐸𝐧𝐠 stood up off of the bed. Even thought she was a good 3 or 4 inches shorter than me. She was still terrifying. She glared at me as if I was the one who just told her she was never going to see her mate again. We are doing this because we want to protect you. Shredders took you away from us. Gray, you're my daughter. You were supposed to be here with us. She shouted back angrily. I clenched my teeth together, trying extremely hard not to let my emotions get the best of me. I knew the moment I did that I would have to deal with my wolf coming out again. It's a real shame then that now pack wolves, my own family, are taking me away from the one person who I'm truly supposed to be with. I said as calmly as possible, knowing that my shouting was just making Alex shout, which in turn made my wolf feel the need to rise once again. Too bad you're too close-minded to realize how much that shredder means to me. I turned on my heel to begin walking back to my room when Alex stopped me. Do you even know what a shredder is, Gray? Do you know what they do? She shouted at me. I clenched my jaw and hands into fists as I stared angrily at the door. I didn't want to turn around and face my mother. They kill people. They took you from me. Kieran didn't. I snapped at her, feeling the need to defend him immediately. I didn't want to believe what she was telling me. Kieran doesn't just kill people for no reason. He's so much better than that. Marilyn. Maybe. Not Kieran. Maybe not from me. But how did you end up with him? Did he try killing you, or did one of them? I visibly tensed at her question. I tried hard to push away the memory of Marilyn attempting to tear me apart in the clear little park we met in. That's what they do. Gray. Shredders are called shredders because they rip and tear everything, anyone apart in their way. And it's all just some game to them. I'm sure they've killed people right in front of you. And you didn't even think anything of it. They have you brainwashed. Gray. That's not how pack wolves like us act. I turned around to look at my mother, who looked frigid. I could tell she was pissed. Oh boy. Was she mad? Her jaw was clenched. And I knew by the look on her face that she had been glaring daggers into the back of my head. I spent my entire life being called a lunatic. But everything you just said was 10 times crazier than anything I had ever said. Ever. I turned away from her and began walking away from her. I got to the door and stopped, but didn't bother turning around. Kieran is my mate, my other half. If you're gonna call him a shredder, then you might as well call me one too. And with that off of my chest, I stormed down the hall, through the pack house, and back to my room. I had a new mindset, and in no way was anyone going to stop me from seeing what is mine. My mother was a lunatic. Obviously. There was no way in hell that my friends were anything that Alex had described. Well, I intended to keep on telling myself that, hoping that maybe I would end up believing it. My Kieran isn't a killer. Chapter 18, I'm not mad. Just loud. The next few days were anything but exciting. Out of the 5 days that had passed since the incident with Alex, Eli had helped me see Kieran Weiss. Both times that I went down to see him, both Bolton and Kieran were there, but not Marilyn. Apparently, she was being questioned quite frequently after she admitted to attempting to murder me. Eli talked our father and brother into letting him stand guard of the cellars a few days of the week. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Grayson and y'all shooed away Eli and his stupid idea. They already had various large groups of men ready for the job. Eli would be much more useful doing things like patrolling the new territory they had just expanded to, or help assist training some of the younger warriors. Eventually, they gave Eli the permission to help guard the cellars after he said, "And Siasan, I quote, I will do whatever is necessary to protect this pack and my sister. I will be making sure she stays the hell away from them. And you won't tell me otherwise." To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. That wasn't the real reason. The real reason was that he was trusted to stand guard during dinners, so that gave me much more time to see Kieran. I was definitely happier than before now was getting to see Kieran, but Alex's words from our argument were still bothering me. I'm sure they've killed people right in front of you, and you didn't even think anything of it. They have you brainwashed. Gray, that's not how pack wolves like us act. I couldn't push away the memory of Kieran shooting the redhead who tried killing me. He did it with so little to no remorse. But then again she tried to murder me. So, she pretty much deserved it. Right. Alex was right. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐸𝐿 𝐊𝐢𝐳 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Grey Hayes was a pack wolf, but not Arden Aldridge. Arden Aldridge was just some orphan child who grew up in a mental hospital, and then happened to meet a group of psychotic, killing machines that call themselves shredders. You are right. Kieran asked, breaking me away from my thoughts. Yeah, I'm fine, I answered, tossing him another pretzel from the bag I stole from the kitchen. I turned to Bolton in the cell across from Kieran and tossed him one too. He shot me a wicked smile. Thanks, Princess. He thanked me with a smirk. I nodded and turned back to Kieran when I heard a low growl emit from him. I knew he wouldn't like Bolton calling me Princess. Hey, stop it, I scolded Kieran. I didn't need anyone hearing him and coming down to make sure everything was okay. I would for sure get caught. And I don't even want to know what would happen. Got anything else to drink? Marilyn asked with a scratchy voice. She tossed the water bottle I had given her back to me empty. No. I could only bring so much, I stated, picking up the bottle and chucking her a pretzel. She huffed, but ate the pretzel. Why not just bring a duffel bag next time? Grey, Bolton joked. I glared at him for using my real name. Don't call me that. I told them what happened with everything. I told them about the fight with Alex, and how Eli was making it his mission to help me. Since then, Bolton insists on calling me Grey. He's only joking. But it still makes me mad. With them, I'm Arden. I'm not Grey. Grey, you gotta go, Eli shouted from down the hall of the cellars, causing me to jump. I didn't answer him. I just stood up and looked back at Kieran. I'll be back, I swear, I assured, reaching into the pretzel bag and throwing a handful of pretzels into each of their cells. Arden, don't fight with your family, Kieran said as I was turning to walk out of the cellar. I stopped and faced him. What? I questioned. His dark green eyes narrowed on me in a demanding way. Be good to them. Try to get along with them, he said, taking me by shock. I furrowed my brows and took a step towards him. Why? Because in 30 years, I don't want you to look back on this and wish you would have taken the time to get to know them. We won't be coming back once we're gone. I felt my heart rate skip about 7 beats. He was being so serious about this, and it scared me a bit. He was right. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐸𝐿 𝐊𝐢𝐳 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I should be using this time to get to know them. Kieran was sure he was going to get all of us out of here, and I knew we wouldn't be coming back. There was no way we could. Don't argue with him on this. Just go, Marilyn said seriously. I was taken back by her sudden outburst. She never usually acts like that. She's usually the one to continue egging on Kieran, not agree with his demands. Fine, I mumbled, turning away from them and walking out of the cellars. Eli held the door open for me and shut it as I walked out. Got everything? He questioned. I nodded, showing him the 3 empty water bottles and the half-eaten bag of pretzels. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐸𝐿 𝐊𝐢𝐳 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Now you should probably go get some dinner. I'm sure there's still some left over. I gave him a small smile and another nod. Thanks, Eli. You don't know how much I appreciate all of this. I thanked him. A part of me wanted to hug him, but I decided against it. I knew Eli was doing this for the safety of his pack and not for me. Allowing me to see them was the best bet of protection they had if Kieran, Marilyn, and Bolton happened to get out. I left Eli and crept around the halls carefully. If I got caught just randomly carrying pretzels and 3 water bottles, someone would know something was up. I shoved the bottles into the pretzel bag, hoping that if someone did catch me, they wouldn't find it weird that I was just randomly carrying around a bag of pretzels. I slowly made my way to the kitchen. I needed to throw the bottles away and put the pretzels back in the cupboard. I was about to walk through the doorway until I saw something making me freeze. Alex and Grayson. Then, I hurriedly ran out of the doorway and hid behind the wall. My heart was beating out of my chest, but all that I could hope for was that Alex or Grayson didn't hear it. I don't know what else to do. You try talking to her. I don't see much of an effort from you. Alex shouted. I wanted to peek around the corner so badly, but I was too terrified of getting caught. What do you want me to do? I'm trying to help y'all with those shredders down in the damn cells. He angrily growled at her, causing me to jump. Did you just growl at me? Alex questioned him, obviously angered by his action. Don't you dare growl at me. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝. She shouted. I'm sure the whole house could hear their argument. They weren't trying very hard to be quiet. So you can be mad at me, but I can't be mad at you. Grayson snapped back. I'm not mad at you. I'm just as loud. Alex retorted. I gulped and debated whether or not I should just go hide in my room. I did not feel that hiding behind the wall was the best form of camouflage or protection. Well, you're too loud, wow. Wow, Grayson. Alex chuckled. But it was obvious she was still mad. Great comeback. What's next? You're just gonna say you hate me. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You can't be serious. You're being so dramatic right now, Grayson stated. His words were followed by a scoff which I assumed was from Alex. Their bickering made me genuinely curious as to if they were even true mates me. No, I think you're being much more dramatic than me. So you know what? I'm leaving, she stated as I heard footsteps walking away. Gray, Alex shot out, but then stopped. It was quiet for a moment. My curiosity got the best of me, so I peeked out around the corner. Grayson was holding Alex against him as he kissed her. I wanted to out loud, but instead I just hid back behind the corner as they pulled apart. I'm sorry, Alex whispered. It just bothers me that she seems to literally hate me. Can't we just let her see him? No, I will not be giving him the satisfaction of seeing her. He's a cocky asshole, Grayson muttered angrily. I frowned, knowing they were talking about Kieran and I. Alex was trying to help. Gray is your daughter. She deserves to at least see her mate one more time. She tried to reason. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing enthusiasm. She doesn't even know how to protect herself if something were to happen. How do you know that he's not just tricking her? They may not even be mates. Kieran wouldn't do that. I knew for a fact that he was my mate. We were destined for each other. It wasn't just the pull that I had to him, but the sparks were there. So it was obvious. Why wasn't it obvious to my own father? Well, then train her or get someone to. Then, will you let her at least see him? Alex urged. I couldn't help a smile that came to my lips. Grayson sighed. I assume that even if I say no that you will continue pressing the topic. Grayson asked. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing enthusiasm. Alex replied as if he should have already known. Then, we will see. Go tell her that her training starts tomorrow. I'm not sure how, but the smile on my face grew even bigger. I didn't think it was quite possible, but apparently it was. I love you so much, Alex shouted. I was just about to turn to leave when I remembered I still had the pretzels and bottles. I knew I could just take them upstairs and hide them, but I was already down here. I took a few deep breaths before walking into the kitchen. I tried making it seem as if I had no clue they were even in there. Alex saw me before Grayson did. Her face went from happy to one that looked a bit scared. I don't think it was because she feared me. I think it was because she was scared of how I would act around Grayson or how Grayson would act around me. Hi, I said, trying to seem like I was just carelessly walking into the kitchen and over to the garbage. I put my head down and grabbed the bottles out of the pretzel bag to throw them away. 3 bottles of water. Grayson questioned, making me freeze. That was honestly, I think, the first thing he has ever really said to me. Yeah. I said, feeling my heart rate speed up. I turned around to face the two of them. Kieran told me to drink lots of water. At my words, Alex frowned and Grayson's jaw clenched. Alex looked up at Grayson and backhanded his stomach, noticing how angry he seemed to have gotten at my mention of Kieran. I threw the bottles away and moved to the cupboards. I placed the pretzels back where I got them from, and then turned back around to face my parents. "Do you think there's any room for me at the dinner table?" I asked, hesitantly. I had been telling everyone I was eating in my room, which was half true. Some days I did eat in my room, but other days I was down in the cellars with Kieran. Alex's eyes lit up. "Of course there is. Gray, we'll make room," she assured with a smile. I gave her a small smile in return. It felt almost wrong trying to get along with the people who kidnapped my mate, my friends, and I. But then again it didn't. Kieran wanted me to get to know my parents. It felt right doing what I knew would make him happy. To my 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐑𝐐𝐝, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. "Well, thanks," I stated with a small smile. I turned to leave, but Alex stopped me. "Wait," she said, holding her hand out. "How would you feel about training?" Her blue eyes stared intently in my grey ones. She was holding Grayson's hand, or I suppose he was holding hers. He grabbed her hand in an attempt to calm nerves. "I'm guessing. What about training?" I questioned, trying to act dumb. I looked between her and Grayson. I could help but stare at my father's eyes. They were so similar to mine. I now understood why so many people were so intrigued by mine growing up. "You start tomorrow. You need to learn to defend yourself," Alex said, making me feel one step closer to being able to see Kieran without having to sneak around. But then it hit me. I don't think that's a good idea. I spoke in a bit of panic. I could feel the color drain from my face. I don't have very much control over my wolf. I've only ever really trained with Kieran, and that was just a little bit. He's the only one who really knows how to control her. I admit that I was a bit panicked. My wolf already hated everyone here. If she got mad enough, she would probably try to murder everyone. She hasn't tried very hard to push past me lately, but I don't doubt that she will. Grayson let out a low growl at the mention of Kieran. Again, I flinched slightly, which earned him another backhand to the stomach from Alex. "Don't worry," Alex said reassuringly with a smile. "We will be sure to only train you with the best." I nodded and smiled, leading her to think that I was actually happy for the opportunity. But I definitely was not. This wasn't going to end well. And when I end up murdering someone, I will for sure not be able to see Kieran. If anything, I may not be seeing anyone ever again if I end up murdering someone. Chapter 19, Little Riley Jr. My mind did not give me a break all night. My thoughts roamed in every direction, and somehow they all ended with me thinking of Kieran. I wanted to know what he was doing and how he was feeling. I didn't know if he was hungry or thirsty. I didn't know if he was okay or if he was in absolute pain. I didn't know, and it was driving me insane. My thoughts made sleep impossible. I tossed and turned and occasionally just stared at the white ceiling above me. By the time morning came, I was a bit of an emotional mess. I'd already cried twice through the night thinking about what could happen if I couldn't control my wolf during training. I didn't want to think about it, but it was inevitable. I was terrified. I tended to overthink about things that I was scared of. By the time it was 5 a.m, I couldn't stand laying in my bed much longer. I pushed myself out of it and wandered into my bathroom to get ready for the day. I enjoyed having a bathroom in my room at first because that meant I didn't have to leave my room very much. I could just stay put where no one would bother me until it was time to see Kieran. Now it just annoys me that almost everything I need to live is all in my little room. It honestly made me mad that I didn't really have a reason to leave other than food and water. I didn't want to go meet new people, but at the same time I did. In my own little mind, it made sense for me to just sit in my room and pout like a 5-year-old. If I couldn't see Kieran, then no one was going to make me leave. But then again, I wanted a reason to get out. I hated it in here now. I hated the wall color, The windowsills, the doors, the flooring. I just hated all of it. I decided to just hop into the shower. It didn't make much sense because I had gotten one before I went to bed, but I was hoping the hot water would wash away all of my problems. It didn't. It was a decent distraction, but as soon as I stepped out to put on some clothes Kieran flooded my thoughts again. With a tired frown, I just threw on some blue underwear that were nothing like the ones Meriden bought me, a grey sports bra, some black Nike running shorts and a purple t-shirt. I didn't bother with socks. I always hated socks growing up. I didn't like the way they felt on my feet. I exited my room after finishing whatever else I needed to do, not expecting to see as many people as I had. There weren't a lot of people out, but it was more than I thought there would be. I noticed in the time that I was here that most of the people living in the pack house were teens or young adults. I assumed it was this way due to mated couples wanted to get their own houses to raise their own families. I made my way all the way to the kitchen without making direct eye contact with anyone. I didn't have to look at them to know that they were all looking at me. I would too if my Alpha's kidnapped daughter returned us 17 years with a group of shredders who like kidding for sport well. That's what Alex says. I went to the kitchen hoping to grab a bowl of cereal or even a banana, but instead found something else. I found her blue eyes before they had the opportunity to find mine. She was placed in a box on the kitchen table that seemed a bit heavy. She shot me a gorgeous smile. And again, I was questioning how I turned out looking this way with a mother like her. Everyone around me seemed so gorgeous. And then here I am. Do you need help? I asked hesitantly. She dropped the box with a bang. Honestly, yes, but I'm fine, Alex said, shooing me away. I was about to turn around and leave when I remembered what Kieran had said before. I mean, the least that I could do for him was try to get along with him. It was obvious that he must have had issues with his parents growing up. He knew how much I wanted to meet them, and he didn't want this whole issue messing up my dreams of getting to know my parents. It's no problem, I said, shaking my head. I want to spend some time with you. I sort of forced myself to say. I wanted to spend time with Kieran, Marilyn, and Bolton, but at the same time I knew a part of me wanted nothing more than to spend time with Alex. She shot me another gorgeous smile. Her eyes held some sort of excitement or happiness. I understood Grayson fell so in love with her. Not only was she beautiful, but it was obvious that she was definitely an interesting character. Sure, she was usually terrifying like the rest of my family, but at times like this she seemed so young and genuinely beautiful. Well, I'm moving some stuff from our house over here since I don't see us going back anytime soon, she said, running her hands through her light brown hair. I gave her a confused look. Our house? Wasn't this our house? When your dad and I had y'all, we bought ourselves our own house. We lived there until you were born, she said as the smile on her face slowly faded into a frown. We decided to move back into the pack house due to a rogue attack on a neighboring pack. Grayson was worried that we wouldn't be safe away from the pack house. And with you being so small, we didn't want to take any chances. Oh, I said, not knowing what else to say. Alex sighed after a moment of thinking and then shot me another smile. Well, I suppose we should go over and get the last few boxes. The ride there was quiet. We just sat in silence. But it was a comfortable silence. It wasn't even 8 yet, so the morning air was a bit chilly. It was coming to the end of August. I couldn't wait for fall. It was always my favorite season. We arrived at the house, and to be completely honest, I was expecting something much bigger. The house seemed to be only 2 floors. It looked like an average house. The exterior was dark grey and white with some stone detailing. It had a fairly sized yard, and from what I could tell was an in-ground pool. Alex took me inside and showed me around the house. It was exactly what I expected from her. The inside of the house followed the same concept as the exterior, except the inside was painted a brown instead of grey. It was a breathtaking house, and I could tell just by the inside of the house that my parents were loaded. My room was probably what surprised me the most. It was pretty similar to my room at the pack house. The one thing that really stuck out about it, To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nelben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Was my name on the wall. In large, grey letters my name was plastered against a white wall just above a crib. Grey Riley Hayes. My eyes softened as I stared at the name on the wall. That was it. That was all of it. It was a beautiful name, but for some reason it made me sick. Not just because I never grew up the way Grey would have grown up, but because my middle name happened to be the same name of the man that caused all of this. You named me after Grayson and his brother. I asked, turning to face my mother. She was biting her lip. Her eyes were glassy, and I could tell that she was trying hard not to cry. She put her head down and started shaking it back and forth. I named you after the Riley Hayes that I grew up knowing. The little boy who loved Legos and hated the Tooth Fairy, she said, looking back up at me. A tear rolled down her cheek, which she did not bother to acknowledge. That's who I named you after, not the monster that they turned him into. I could tell just how much Riley meant to her. It was obvious that Riley must have been a big part of her life. How, I don't know, but I couldn't help but feel bad. She was my mother, and no matter how much I wanted to blame her, my dad, and Joel for what was happening, I knew it was really all Riley's fault. I knew that if Riley hadn't done what he had, then we wouldn't be in this situation. And Alex knew that too. Upset. Go to her. I was surprised by my wolf's words. I wasn't even sure if she was being truthful or not. I just stood there like an idiot, feeling guilty for making Alex feel upset. I felt guilty knowing that my existence was what was causing all of this. Be happy. Go to Mom. It suddenly made sense. My wolf probably could care less that my mom was upset. She just knew that I was upset that my mom was upset. My wolf was never like this usually. I slowly made my way over to my mother. The feeling was extremely foreign as I wrapped my arms around her. She hugged me back and buried her face in my shoulder. It was a bit awkward considering I was taller than her, but I didn't mind it, to be honest. I'd been craving a moment like this from the time I was a child. I knew I should have named you after Ashton. We left the house pretty directly after that. We went to her room to grab about 5 more boxes, which I assumed were full of clothes. As we were about to leave, I pointed out a broken lamp in the corner of her room, which she easily brushed off, saying that she had gotten frustrated earlier that morning. I didn't ask anything else about it after that. The drive home was nice. Alex asked a little bit about my time in the orphanage, which I'd answered honestly. I basically just told her about an incident when I threatened to throw a guard upstairs for calling me a crazy person. My wolf was not happy that day. I helped take the boxes inside. I carried 3 in with no problem, while Alex struggled a bit to carry 2. I offered to carry one of her boxes, but she said she didn't want me to hurt myself. Quite frankly, I felt like I was carrying pillows. But okay. All was going well until Joel and another boy walked into the kitchen. Alex's eyes lit up seeing the 2 of them. The brown-haired, brown-eyed boy gave Alex a small smile. Instantly, all that I could think of was, please don't tell me that I have another brother. Hey boys, where's Eli? Alex asked the 2 in front of us. Looking for Gray, Joel said, glaring at the 2 of us. My face paled instantly, knowing that I didn't mention to anyone that I was leaving. Jail. Knock it off. She was with me. Alex barked back with a glare of her own, making Joel's disappear. Alex then turned to me with a smile. Gray, this is Abbott, she said, gesturing to the boy beside Joel. His brown hair was a little long and it curled. His brown eyes were quite the opposite of Marilyn's dark ones. His were light and seemed so friendly. Yet definitely not like Marilyn's. He's going to be training you. My eyes grew instantly. This man was probably the size of Kieran, but I was instantly terrified. He seemed friendly, but to be frank, he was massive. I knew when Kieran was training me, he would go easy on me. He never hurt me. He almost killed Marilyn a few times for nearly breaking my back. One of those times were when she threw me against the side of the house for trying to attack her when my wolf took over. But Kieran never intentionally hurt me. Alex and Joel explained to me that Abbott and Eli grew up training together. Abbott was a year younger than Eli, but they were best friends. Abbott was the closest person to Eli's strength, and Grayson had made the decision not to let me fight against anyone that he didn't think would make it out of a scuffle with my wolf alive. Eli was actually going to train me, but 𝐻𝐤 was sending him to help patrol the new territory that they had just managed to take over. I was completely right for saying that I was terrified of training with Abbott. Every time he would land a punch to some part of my body, I had to take a moment to calm my wolf down. She was angry, and she wanted out. She wanted to rip Abbott apart. And I'm almost positive she was angry with me, too, for putting us in this situation. I groaned as my back collided with the matted floors of the training room. Like I said, Abbott was huge, so it was very easy for him to just lift me up and throw me. He did that a lot. I was too afraid to actually fight back. I didn't want him to come back at me harder and give my wolf an even better reason to take over. I just laid there for a moment before I felt hands grip my ankle. "Oh my God, no!" I shouted as he dragged me back over to the center of the room. I was kicking my legs wildly, and in that moment, I knew Marilyn would be so disappointed. I froze, remembering about the few times that Marilyn and I trained. One time jumped to my memory instantly. I tried my best to replicate what Marilyn had done to me in this exact situation. I swiftly raised my opposite foot to his chest. I grasped onto his wrists and pulled them down as I kicked my leg up, sending him flipping over me. I don't think he was expecting it because I landed with a thud on his back. I quickly stood up and stared down at him, not sure what to do next. He groaned and pushed himself off of the ground. My wolf hummed loudly, knowing we caused Abbott some sort of pain. Abbott didn't waste any time coming at me again. He landed a solid kick to my head, making me fall backwards. My vision blurred, and I felt extremely woozy. My head hurt, and it wasn't until I could smell my own blood falling from my nose that I knew my wolf was taking over. I tried yelling at her to stop, but she wouldn't listen. She just kept saying, "He hurt us." My brain felt like it was going to explode the more that I tried to get control back. She was not going to give me control back until Abbott was a dead man. My heart sank when I knew she had finally taken over. The headache was gone. It was replaced by enhanced vision, a heightened sense of smell, and a viscous growl that I knew was from me. I sat up and turned to Abbott with a sinister smile plastered across my face. I have to be honest. It felt honest that I was the reason Abbott looked like he was about to pee himself. But I also knew what my wolf's intentions were as she began standing up. That wasn't very nice. 𝐊𝐤𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. "I will," my wolf said. In an instant, my wolf's hand was around Abbott's neck. With that, she threw Abbott like a rag doll across the room. His back hit the wall of the training room, and I'm almost positive that the whole house shook. Abbott was shouting things at me, but I couldn't hear him. I saw his lips moving, but none of his words made their way to my ears. My wolf let out a large laugh as she walked over to Abbott. She brought her foot back ready to kick him, but he rolled away, causing me to kick a hole into the wall. I felt anger flare up within me. "Look at what you made me do," my wolf shouted at him. Abbott was standing now. He had his arms up, trying to show me that he was done. But my wolf didn't care. Abbott was still breathing, and she did not like that. I threw a punch at Abbott, which he blocked. He then pushed me backward, making my back hit the wall. I snarled, causing Abbott's jaw to clench. I ran back at him. I threw another punch at him that he ducked, but then I used my opposite hand to land a punch under his jaw. The punch launched a bit into the air. He fell back onto the floor. It's a real shame. 𝐊𝐤𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My wolf said, walking over to his body on the floor. "I really liked your hair," she complimented just before her canines retracted. She was inches away from ripping his throat out until a pair of strong arms came up behind us. They wrapped themselves around my body, making another flash of anger surge through me. "Let go," my wolf snarled, jumping around in the strong arms. The man was not budging. My wolf threw my head back, making my head collide with the persons behind me. Their grip on me loosened, which gave my wolf the perfect opportunity to get out. She ripped out of the man's arms and turned to look at him. "I'll kill you," she shouted, staring at the familiar pair of grey eyes. Then, a hand covered my mouth as something pricked my arm just by my shoulder. I instantly felt my wolf shrinking inside of me. She was fighting to keep control, causing my headache to return. It disappeared when my vision as well as my other senses went back to normal. The hand moved away from my mouth as I stood there staring into the eyes of my father. My heart was racing. I was sweating, but my entire body was freezing. I wanted to cry or something as I saw 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐩𝐿 get up off the floor from the corner of my eye. "I told you this would happen. I only train with Kieran."